What if I told you that everything you know about your life, the routines, the struggles, the endless cycle, wasn't an accident, that it's all part of a plan to keep you exactly where you are? It might sound like something out of a movie, but the truth is, many of us are stuck in a system designed to make us feel powerless, like fish swimming in circles in a tiny tank, unaware of the glass walls that trap us. If you've ever wondered why life sometimes feels like you're just going through the motions, like a robot on autopilot, keep watching. We're about to uncover the forces that have shaped the world we live in, and why it feels like we're being held captive without even realizing it. The hidden players behind the curtain. Three powerful groups have been working together for centuries to ensure that a small circle stays in control of society. Their goal? To keep power, wealth, and influence in their hands, while the rest of us are left to be obedient to our routines and to not question anything.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
The royal elite. For centuries, even from the ancient times, the elites operated in a certain way. Societies across the globe, whether Africa, Asia, Europe, or other continents, shared a system where people believed in inherent social hierarchies. This helps different classes to stay in their lanes. For example, Christians believed that some were born with royal blood, divinely chosen to rule. The fact that someone had power was seen as a sign that God wanted it that way. These rulers were special not because of anything they did, but simply because they were born. This continues to this day. As most countries do not have a monarchy, they still find a way to let the public know that there is a higher power. The public has to recognize that they still live under a mighty empire. In modern-day society, this is achieved not through military might. Otherwise, they will be seen as tyrants and too expensive. Other weapons are used. Americans call theirs the Hearts and Minds Campaign. So you do not need guns and tanks. You need entertainment, sports, concerts, and patriotism. They will make you feel like your loyalty to the empire is your identity. And then there is the spiritual elite. Spiritually elite, such as priests, saints, and clergy, who were seen as the only ones capable of truly understanding God. If anyone dared to challenge or disagree with them, it was considered not just a crime against them, but against God himself. This created a partnership between the political elite and the spiritual elite, with each reinforcing the other's power. The spiritual leaders would tell the people to be loyal to the rulers, while the rulers protected and funded the spiritual leaders. In return, the both entities maintained control over the masses. This relationship ensured that those in power could rule unchallenged. The financial elite. If you thought the currencies you have in your banks just sit there, think again. Banks use our money to invest and fund many shady organizations. Setting bank reserve requirements, influencing interest rates, and printing money are all tools central banks use to control the money supply. The Federal Reserve can literally print money, which directly affects the inflation rates. The more supply of money, the more things get expensive. Who does this affect the most? The common people, like you and me.
If you have a $50 bill, and I give it to the barber for my haircut, and then he goes and buys groceries with it from the grocer, and the grocer goes and gets his car washed, the $50 goes from place to place, and after 20 or 30 transactions, the $50 bill belongs to somebody and it's worth $50. Whereas if I pay by card, 1.5% goes to the bank. And then if he takes the money I've given him and pays for the groceries, 1.5% goes to the bank. And after the groceries have been paid for, when he goes to get his car washed, 1.5% goes to the bank. So after 20 or 30 transactions, $50 is gone, the bank has it all. I think that's why they're so desperate to get rid of cash.
They have rigged the system so money remains at the top. Historically, alongside the royal and spiritual elite, the financial elite, the wealthy, were considered blessed by God and deserving of their wealth. The common people were seen as lesser, who were meant to serve these elites. This unholy trinity of political, spiritual, and financial elites dominated societies. Laws applied differently to them. They would be protected from the consequences of their crimes, while the common people were punished. One example of this is the case of Prince Andrew, who was part of the British royal family, who managed to escape any legal action when he was found to be enjoying himself on Epstein's Island. Only the rich and powerful would visit the island. Although there was sufficient evidence to convict, sadly, no further arrests were made. How Islam disrupted the system. This system was not unique to Christianity. It existed in Mecca before the arrival of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Pre-Islamic era documents the Quraysh, who were a tribe of people in the Arabian Peninsula. They believed they were the chosen custodians of the Kaaba, the most holiest place on earth. They were supported by corrupt religious authorities who validated their position, and they controlled the wealth. But when the Quran was revealed, it directly challenged the system. Allah declared that all human beings were created from a single soul, making no distinction between royal or common blood, rich or poor, master or slave. In prayer, everyone stood shoulder to shoulder, erasing worldly hierarchies. In Islam, equality is not just theoretical, it's practiced in every act of worship. When Muslims stand in rows for prayer, there's no special section for rulers or wealthy elites. They're all equal before Allah. The only criterion for superiority, as Allah mentions in the Quran, is taqwa, God consciousness. This revolutionized the concept of nobility. True nobility didn't come from wealth, lineage, or power, but from one's piety, kindness, honesty, and loyalty to justice. If we truly followed this concept, racism, bigotry, discrimination, and class hierarchy system will have no strength in society. This radical idea of equality threatened the established social order. In Islam, no one is above being questioned or criticized. Scholars could debate each other's interpretations of the Quran, with no one being free from being challenged. This openness to inquiry and debate was a strength of the Islamic tradition. In contrast, before Islam, access to religious texts like the Bible was restricted. Only clergy had copies of the scriptures, and the general public had to rely on their interpretations, and naturally, they would interpret it to their benefit. When the Quran was revealed, it was not locked away in sacred places for a select few. It was memorized and recited openly, accessible to all. This was revolutionary because now everyone had direct access to God's words. They could engage with the Quran, ask questions, and learn from those more knowledgeable. Faith wasn't just inherited from family or accepted because of social norms, it came from personal conviction. Even now, when you look at the Christian traditions, it is common to ask for forgiveness through another person. For instance, confessing your sins to a priest behind a veil, whereas Islam encourages direct speech to Allah, not through someone who is considered to have some special access to God. It's been nearly 1,500 years since the Quran was revealed, and over time, people tend to forget the revolutionary spirit of Islam. For instance, one of the 5 pillars in Islam is the act of giving 2.5% of a person's wealth to charity. This is called zakat. This is not optional. It is mandatory. Islam regards this portion as owed to the poor. It's as if to say that is allocated for the poor, it is actually their money that we hold. It has been estimated that if this was truly followed by the world, poverty will be a thing of the past. The enslavement of the world. Historically and in current times, oppressive regimes prevent people from learning and questioning, fearing that exposure to new ideas would weaken their control. If you look at the education system, ask yourself, what life-changing skills have you learned? Majority of the knowledge you learnt from the education system, which is also handed down by the elite, is ineffective in real life. Sure, the fundamentals like reading, writing, and basic maths is useful, but overall, if you think about it, it is just a program to create a workforce to run their corporations.
That's the big answer to everything. Education. They said we need more money for education. We need more books, more teachers, more classrooms, more schools. We need more testing for the kids. And you say to them, well, you know, we've tried all of that, and the kids still can't pass the test. So, don't you worry about that. We're going to lower the passing grades.
This is why we are never taught about taxes, mortgages, or how to open and scale a business. This may cause us to break free from the invisible chains they have us in, which will mean less control. Historically, before the taxation and banking systems developed, the kings would send forces to collect the money in exchange for living under that ruler. They realized they have to pay for the force, the cart, the horse, and travel expenses. Instead, they said, let's make an automatic billing system. So now you will pay a fee automatically when you drive down the open highway feeling free when passing a toll booth. You will smile with the feeling of freedom while being robbed. Even when receiving your wages, you will pay the elite in tax first before you receive your hard-earned wages. It is clear that a secular, godless world is being pushed, but we as humans have this innate nature to worship something. Hear me out on this. If you look at a football stadium and how the fans behave, would you not say attending games is a ritual, often accompanied by pre-game traditions like tailgating, wearing team colors, and singing anthems? Fans chant and cheer in unison, creating a collective sense of belonging. This sounds very similar to attending Sunday church or attending the mosque for prayer. Just like religious prophets, star players are often treated like saints or demigods, and moments of brilliance on the field can be seen as acts of divinity. Fans may remember legendary players and have shrines of them long after they retire, much like how saints are recognized. This is one example, just to list a few others. The idolizing of celebrities, desperation for wealth or materials, devoting one's self to a political group, the list goes on. By keeping you engaged in worldly entertainment, you remain distracted within the system. So what can you do about it? It can feel overwhelming to realize how deeply rooted these systems of control are and how they influence almost every aspect of our lives, from the political and spiritual to the financial and social. But here's the thing. Awareness is the first step toward breaking free. Understanding the mechanisms of control allows us to reclaim our independence. While it's true that oppressive systems have shaped society for centuries, individuals have always had the power to resist, to question, and to forge their own paths. This is where personal empowerment begins. So how do we take control of our own lives? Educate yourself. While the traditional education system may have failed to prepare us for life in some aspects, the beauty of the modern world is that knowledge is more accessible than ever before. You can learn skills that directly impact your life, whether that's understanding personal finance, critical thinking, or building businesses. Free yourself from the limitations imposed by the system by being a lifelong learner. Reconnect with spirituality. Finding a connection to something greater than yourself can ground you. It can serve as a reminder that true value comes not from the material world or societal status, but from your inner character and how you treat others. Embrace financial independence. It's clear that the financial elite benefit from a system that keeps the majority struggling, but that doesn't mean we are powerless. By gaining control over your finances, learning about investments, managing debt, and even exploring entrepreneurship, you can break free from the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle and reduce dependence on institutions that don't have your best interest at heart. Practice gratitude and simplicity. One of the biggest traps is the endless pursuit of material wealth and status. But true happiness often comes from appreciating the simple things: family, friendships, nature, and experiences. Focusing on what truly matters instead of the distractions society throws at us can bring you a sense of freedom and fulfillment. In the end, while systems of control will always exist in some form, each of us has the power to resist being controlled. The more we educate ourselves, connect with our values, and prioritize what's truly important, the more we can live a life of purpose, peace, and independence. The first step is recognizing the chains that bind us. The next is breaking them, one at a time.